year 2013. A dimly lit boardroom in Menlo Park, California. The air is thick with the kind of tension that usually precedes a historic merger or a total declaration of war. Mark Zuckerberg, the king of social media, slides a piece of paper across the table. The number on that paper? $3 billion. Cash. Facing him is a 22-year-old college dropout. He has no profit. No business model. And his app is mostly used for sending blurry photos that disappear. Most people would have grabbed the money and ran. Most people would have secured their bloodline for 10 generations. But EvanSpiegel looked the most powerful man in tech in the eye, and said no. The world called him arrogant. His investors called him insane. But Evan knew something they didn't. This isn't just a story about an app. It's a story about ego, betrayal, and the $3 billion gamble that changed the internet forever. This is the story of EvanSpiegel, founder of Snapchat. To understand the defiance of 2013, we have to go back to the halls of Stanford University in 2011. EvanSpiegel wasn't your typical started-from-the-garage scrappy founder. He was a product of ultra-wealthy Los Angeles, raised in a world of private planes and million-dollar estates. But Evan was starving for something that money couldn't buy: absolute relevance. He teamed up with two other students, Reggie Brown and Bobby Murphy. They weren't trying to build a global titan. They were trying to solve a very specific, very modern problem. Think about the world in 2011. Facebook was becoming a permanent record. Every mistake you made, every embarrassing photo from a party, every regretful comment, it was all etched into the internet's memory forever. The digital world had become a prison of our own making. The idea was born out of a moment of vulnerability, an app where things disappear. They called the first version Peekaboo. And honestly, it was a disaster. When they pitched it to venture capitalists, they were literally laughed out of the room. The experts said, "Why would anyone want to use a product that deletes its own content? It's a tool for criminals and cheaters." They had $0 in revenue. Their bank accounts were draining into the negatives. Evan was living in his father's house just to keep the lights on. But while the world saw a disappearing photo toy, Evan saw a psychological weapon. He realized that when things disappear, people feel free to be themselves again. But before the fame could arrive, the first great betrayal was already being plotted in the shadows. It's a humid, salt-stained afternoon in a small beach house in California. This was the Snapchat HQ, a cramped room filled with empty Red Bull cans and the hum of overheating laptops. The tension between the three founders was finally boiling over. Reggie Brown, the man who later claimed he came up with the disappearing photo idea and the ghost logo, was being marginalized. The chemistry had turned toxic. According to legal depositions that would later surface, the breakup was cold and surgical. One day, Reggie was part of the team. Next, the locks were changed. The administrative passwords were reset. Access to the servers was cut. Reggie Brown was erased from the company as quickly as a Snapchat message. Now, it was just Evan and Bobby. They rebranded Peekaboo to Snapchat. They didn't have a marketing budget. They didn't have a fancy PR firm. Instead, they relied on a grassroots contagion. Evan's cousin started showing the app to high schoolers in Orange County. It spread through classrooms like a virus. Why? Because for the first time in a decade, the internet felt human. It felt like a real, fleeting conversation in a hallway, not a curated museum of your life. But growth is expensive. Servers were crashing under the weight of millions of photos. Evan was desperately paying the bills with his father's credit card, praying for a miracle before the debt swallowed them whole. He was standing on the edge of a cliff. If this failed, he was just another privileged kid who threw away a Stanford degree for a ghost. Then, the phone rang. It was Menlo Park. Mark Zuckerberg had noticed the ghost. And the friendly invitation to meet was actually a declaration of war. Mark Zuckerberg didn't just want to buy Snapchat because he liked the technology. He wanted to crush it because it was the only thing he couldn't control. During their meeting, Zuckerberg didn't just offer money. He issued a threat. He told Evan that Facebook was currently building a copycat app called Poke. He looked at the 22-year-old and essentially said, "We are going to recreate your app, we are going to use our billions of users to promote it, and we are going to bury you." Evan's response? It wasn't fear. It was total defiance. He went home and bought a copy of Sun Tzu's The Art of War for every single one of his employees. He told his team, "This is where we win." Facebook launched Poke. It hit #1 on the App Store almost instantly. This was the crisis point. The near-death moment. If Poke gained traction, Snapchat was dead. Investors would flee, and the dream would end in a Facebook acquisition for pennies on the dollar. But then, something strange happened. Poke was a corporate product built by a giant machine. It felt cringe. It felt like your parents trying to use slang. Snapchat, however, was a movement. It was us versus them. Within 3 days, Poke plummeted and disappeared from the charts. Snapchat stayed. Evan had beaten the king in open combat. That's when the legendary $3 billion offer came, Zuckerberg's final attempt to buy peace. And Evan said no again. But the victory was short-lived. Just as Evan became the world's youngest billionaire on paper, his past came screaming back to haunt him. Reggie Brown filed a massive lawsuit, demanding billions for his stolen idea. Then, the ultimate nightmare for a public figure, Evan's private emails from his college fraternity days were leaked. They were ugly. They were sexist, crude, and deeply unprofessional. The golden boy image was shattered overnight. The stock price wobbled. The world was watching, popcorn in hand, to see if the young CEO would finally crumble under the pressure of his own ego and his own past. Today, Snapchat is a survivor. It isn't the biggest social network, but it is the most resilient. EvanSpiegel didn't just sell an app, he sold a philosophy. He realized that impermanence is a feature, not a bug. He stayed in the game when everyone told him to take the exit. He chose the stress of leadership over the comfort of $1 billion check. Business isn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about conviction. Most people play the game to get out. EvanSpiegel played the game because he believed he was the only one who knew how to finish it. He once said, "There are very few people in the world who get to build a business like this. I think trading that for some short-term gain isn't very interesting." In a world that wants to record everything, the man who let it all disappear became the man who stayed forever. So, the next time you're faced with a choice between the safe money and your own vision, remember the 22-year-old who said no to $3 billion. Because sometimes, the most expensive thing you can own is your own future.